Welcome back, everybody. And as always, I appreciate you coming back to the channel and hearing more of my content and more of my message. With that in mind, don't forget to hit the subscribe, like, and notification bell down below. It does help support the channel, it does help it grow, reach more people, and as I always say, it keeps me motivated to keep posting content, so I appreciate you all doing that. Today I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about client retention and the client retention model that I choose to run our business with. For us, I'm proud to say, I don't have the exact statistics, but I think this is pretty straightforward and pretty spot on. Over the last 20 years, we've had about 98% client retention. Our first client ever still works with us over 20 years later. And when we gain clients, we typically keep clients. And that is not easy. It's very hard to do. But I want to talk about the model first and what I mean by, kind of the client retention model. Some folks are just cranking out widgets, as they say, right? They're cranking out product, and people either buy or they don't. And maybe they run a supply chain, they don't. Maybe there's quality issues, and I get all that. There's sort of a lot of ebbs and flows that can lend themselves to client retention, right? When I think of producing goods, my mom always liked Coach bags, and they're, the quality, you know what you're getting, and I think their client retention is probably pretty high because people like the quality. So that's in the manufacturing space. But in the service industry, which I'm in, client retention is a little different. You're dealing with personalities, personnel changes. Maybe the person who was the corporate buyer you dealt with for 15 years is gone, and I have someone new. Maybe you're not hitting it off. Maybe they have their favorite vendors. So how do you keep clients over time, right? And I say for me, I couldn't imagine running a business where we weren't focused on client retention, right? The example I always give is picture a bucket, right? And picture filling that bucket with water, and the bucket then gets used to fill up. Then eventually, the bucket gets completely full, and the water starts spilling over the sides. That water then represents investment, extra, if there is such a thing, revenue and money, right? Now I can take that to invest back employees, give them raises, increase maybe some of the benefits and perks that we have at the company, invest in tools that help us be more efficient, invest in modernizing ways that we do business. So that extra water, again, that's flowing out of the bucket becomes that revenue that helps you then do the things you might not normally be able to do if you're just getting by. Now imagine, if you will, that same bucket. And imagine we just drill a small hole in the bottom, right? And there's a constant leak and drip of water out of the bottom of the bucket. Or imagine that hole gets bigger. Every new client you're getting is having to help backfill the water that's receding and the line that's going down because of the water falling out of the bottom. So you're always in that game of having to get clients to make up for the water that just left the bucket. I will just say, for me personally, and I mean like emotionally, I would be manic. I could not imagine the pressure it must feel like to have to constantly be going back to the well to get more clients to backfill revenue that you had already had secured, right? So for me, I like to fortify the clients that we have so that any new clients that we get, we're building on top of our revenue base, right? And I know that what I just said sounds so simple, sounds so straightforward, and so logical, right? If you keep your clients and you keep your revenue, when you get more, then you now have built more revenue on top of it. I understand that. The challenge is, how do you do that, right? How do you have a model that relies on client retention? I would argue there's two ways you do that. One is you treat them, it's going to sound so silly, you treat them like you want to retain them. Don't take them for granted. I have a client we've had for 20 years, our first client. They are still a client today. If they called me today and needed to talk to me personally, not one of our close to 50 employees, I would talk to them for an hour if they wanted me to. I'd come out there if they needed me to. I would treat them as if they're a client that I value. I would not take them for granted. So the first thing is, treat your clients as if you want to retain them, right? Believe it or not, they'll notice. And they'll also notice if you do not treat them in the way that you want to retain them. And then all of a sudden you find out they're not your client anymore. And the second best thing you do, and they're so equal, they're so close, is treat your employees in a way that makes them be advocates for client retention, right? If your employees are happy and your employees are proud to work where they work, then guess what's going to happen? That is just going to emit itself out there when they work with them. I hear it from our clients all the time. Number one, they tell me, you are so blessed to have some of the best people working for you. And they said, number two, whether you notice or not, they really advocate for you in their actions. When they come work with us, you can tell they're so proud to work there. They want to do a good job for us, right? So for me, doing those things necessary for client retention is a really important part of our success. And again, for me, we're talking about client retention model, where you try and retain a high percentage of your clients, versus the model where it's a constant mill of revenue in, revenue out, new clients, old clients, and not really focusing on that. If that's the business model that works, whether it be in a particular market cluster or manufacturing versus services, or services where you just have an unlimited supply of people you can kind of churn through in terms of clients, God bless you if that's your thing. For me, client retention and the client retention model has been a huge part of our success for the last 20 years. For me, I'm very blessed to say that if I had to analyze this, I could always break out a spreadsheet and truly get down to the number. Going into any particular year, and we're talking about millions of dollars worth of business every year, going into any particular year, probably about 75% of our operating costs are already covered by the clients that we have, the contracts that we hold, the retainers, the cyclical nature of their buying, the historical patterns of how we work together. That is such a good feeling. Now, granted, I sweat the 25% that we don't have going in ways that are probably unhealthy, but nonetheless, 75% is already accounted for, assuming no mass client loss before the year even starts, and that is a wonderful place to be. For me, that's how I choose to run the business, and for you, if that's how you want your business to grow and how you want to build your business, then keep in mind the two things: act in a way that helps your clients understand that you want to retain them, and treat your employees in such a way that they will advocate for building that relationship with your clients. See you on the next episode.